Oh, where help? Oh, beautiful.
Most of my videos to date have highlighted the work I do around my family's property. You may see this big red pole barn in the periphery, but up until now it's been mostly an unknown. Believe it or not, I have a really nice workshop. Well, I could have a really nice workshop, but it's been in a state of flux ever since I was converted from a basic, uninsulated storage building for bigger tractor equipment, vehicles, and random junk into this fully functional building with full electric, air conditioning, and finished walls. This all came about a few years ago when I was living out in Kentucky and my Durango's transmission lost its overdrive gear.
Overdrive off. Overdrive on. Overdrive off.
I had gotten it repaired by the cheapest place I could find 9 years ago after I destroyed it towing my Durango's max load from Pennsylvania to Texas back in 2014, completely ignoring the turn overdrive off when towing instructions for driving my vehicle.
When driving in hilly areas, towing a trailer, and carrying a heavy load. Huh, I was doing all of those.
It cost me about $2,000 and I barely had 40,000 miles on it before it gave out again. I wanted to see what the deal was and see if I could repair it better myself because I'm an idiot. So I planned to do the work over the Christmas holiday when I was out visiting my folks in Pennsylvania. The year before, I rebuilt my whole front suspension in our other barn, and my dad immediately thought back to how at 3 a.m. I was wrenching on something and the entire vehicle slipped off the 6 jack stands I had it on and very nearly could have squished me if it weren't for my overly safe setup with way more jacks and blocks in case anything went wrong, which it did. We've always wanted a car lift, and my dad said he'd split the cost of a lift with me, for my safety. Of course, this was all a part of a bigger scheme of his, and it did have me enticed. At the time, I'm thinking, what's $2,000? These things are like $4,000. Definitely worth it so I can come home every couple of months and do a little work on my car if I want to. Now, when we were looking to get this, it was in the height of the supply chain issues, and after doing some research on lift companies, we learned that most are made offshore, and the ones that are made in the US are made really cheaply because they have to compete with the offshore ones, and they're just kind of flimsy. For something I'm placing my literal life under, and seeing enough fail videos of car lifts just breaking apart, and personally knowing a few people that have been crushed by car lifts, my dad and I's eyes wandered to the real behemoth of car lifts, Mohawk. These things are fully made in the USA with a completely hydraulic system and none of that skimpy cable stuff. We really drooled over this beauty. And it turned out that we could get one installed in a week from a local dealer. Being that this was the middle of the major supply chain issues around the world, it really sealed our fate. After nearly quadrupling our planned investment, my dad figured we might as well make the whole pole barn a more usable space. Unfortunately, that couldn't happen within the 2 weeks I had until my vacation started and the transmission work began. So I spent a cold winter learning about car lifts and fixing transmissions in an uninsulated pole barn with only one power outlet and a torpedo heater. I daisy-chained a bunch of cheap Harbor Freight hanging lights and got to work. Anyways, why is any of this important? Well, because as soon as I got done with my month of vacation, enjoying and also hating rebuilding my transmission, as I was preparing to head back to my boring suburban rental house in Kentucky and my cushy but rather mundane engineering job there, my dad sank his hooks in deep as he casually said to me as I was leaving, if you quit your job and move home, I'll give you 90% of the pole barn to use for whatever you want. I laughed it off and headed back to Kentucky, nervously hoping my transmission rebuild worked. After 9 hours of driving filled me with confidence that I was successful in learning how to repair a transmission. The dread of returning back to Kentucky and longing for a proper workshop filled me with remorse. I had just too much fun tinkering the last month, and I couldn't go back to my day job. It didn't take me but a few days to put in my notice at work. I've got a workshop to create. Of course, the vision and reality aren't always in line, and quickly I realized my pole barn was about to be stuffed with a household's worth of stuff. How to fill a 26-foot U-Haul. By having way too much stuff. Oh boy. I need a permanent home. On top of that, my dad conveniently left out the fact that if I wanted the space, I needed to sell off all the tchotchkes we'd accumulated from dead relatives to gain the fabled 90% of the shop he promised me. Also, that 90% apparently didn't include all the equipment he had in there, or as he says, my 10% is any given location at any given time, oftentimes simultaneously. So now I've got this building doubling as my personal storage, with all these collectible bits of junk to be sold, and my dad's stuff, and my conditioning of my time here is only temporary, as I had just spent the last 9 years mostly living out of cardboard boxes because I moved around the world 7 times, spending probably a year of that time in hotel rooms, and I just treated everything I did in there as temporary. Put up some folding tables, used this random metal prep table as a workbench. That kitchen island I made in Kentucky, it's a workbench now. Use the plastic shelves I've moved all around the country that I bought when I was 16. That's all the shelving I could possibly need. It's so obvious this doesn't work, but here I am doing it anyways, just barely staying functional in this space. It's time to make a change, and it's time to make this pole barn my workshop. Today, it starts with the unexciting task of cleaning up, but with this effort I can start to see the things I need, identify where I fail myself and my shop. Where do I put all this stuff? What do I want the focus of my shop to be? How do I consolidate all the items that I've accumulated over the years into useful equipment? The goal today is to find every item's home. It's very likely the root of my problem in this space. I have far too many items without a home. I notice this about myself in general. The items in my life that have a home, a very specific organization, they stay organized and are easy to find and return home after I use them. Everything else, well, becomes this. Of course, I know everything doesn't have a home yet, so I have a trick up my sleeve. Today, I've dedicated a pallet to the homeless, a beautiful corner of chaos to be forgotten about until a later date when I have the energy to figure it out. Now that everything is as organized as I can get it, I can start to envision the workshop's future. A functioning sink would be nice, with various water hookups over there, mixed into a mini kitchen setup. Storage. I know I collect almost useful junk that'll just sit around for years until I find it useful. That's not going to change, so I need to accommodate my condition. I've got 14-foot walls. I think I need tall storage racks wherever I can stuff them. I need a proper workbench. This kitchen island just won't do. And I definitely need an air compressor. This thing, something's wrong with it. I gotta purge it all the time. Get it to start working again. I'm done with this junky little Cobalt one that barely works. Then it'll allow me to build out my welding area and get more air-powered equipment. And then, how do I get all this other equipment that's in here to consolidate or disappear? I guess I'll need to start pestering my dad more on that one. Each piece of equipment gone is precious real estate for my vision of this shop. I like to do metal fabrication, work on cars. Oh yeah. And woodwork.
I think this is a good excuse to get into woodworking.
If I do it right, I can stuff all the equipment I want into the space, but for today, I'll just be content with my tabletops cleaned off.